Hey, good morning or afternoon or evening or whatever. I'm Chase Cunningham or Dr. Cunningham or Dr. Zero Trust. Doesn't really matter. That's not important. Let's get into some important stuff. I'm here with a great friend of mine. Heather, why don't you tell people who you are and what you do? And then we're going to start talking about verifiable credentials.
Heather Dahl. I'm CEO and a co-founder of Indicio, and I've been working on verifiable credentials for as long as I've known you.
Long time.
And a long time. At Indicio, we work with travel and hospitality companies, financial services, and other enterprises around the world on how they can deploy and move into production verifiable credentials to support the emerging initiatives around the world.
So, what is the difference for the average person? Like, if I was going to tell my mom what a verifiable credential is, like, what is that and why should she care?
She should care because, as we're seeing with new countries, it's going to be the fast lane to enter without having to pull out your passport and tap into a gate and go. It's going to mean that she's on the beach in 30 minutes. It's going to mean that she can go through a biometric contactless corridor upon arrival. She is not going to know. It's a verifiable credential. What she's going to know is, in the case of travel and hospitality, she doesn't have to prove her identity 11 different times from the time she leaves her home to the time she sits in her hotel room.
So it's greasing the skids on how all that stuff works on the back end. So like recently I flew to Japan and I've got some travel coming up to Europe. Like I'm going to show my passport and my ID, I don't know, at least probably 8, 10 times.
Yeah.
And I have to go through a bunch of other like rigmarole to enter the country. This whole thing is basically just saying like, just go where you're going to go.
Right. Why do you have to do that? I count 11 times often on most of the trips that you have to prove your identity. And it's because you don't have interoperability between hardware and software. You have different mechanisms in which you prove you're trying to use. In one sense, you're trying to use paper. Another sense, you're trying to pull out a plastic card. Another sense, you're trying to fill out something on an app. Another sense, you're trying to like stand in front of a face pod of a paid subscription service, right? You've got all these different ways you're trying to prove yourself on one journey. And a verifiable credential removes all of that because what it does is it allows you as the traveler to bring your own identity and bring your own biometric. And so when you go to all of these points, whether it is check in, whether it is security, whether it is crossing a border, whether it's checking into your hotel room, renting a car, you provide that identity yourself from your device using biometrics that you carry. And that removes the need for direct integrations, phone homes, tracking and correlation. And that's what smooths it all out because you become the center and the portability of your identity data.
So then, I guess the immediate question somebody with a tinfoil hat would say is like, "Well, my biometrics is, part of this. What if somebody compromises the blah blah?" And 2 points. Number one, isn't biometrics already kind of being used all over the place by a whole bunch of folks that you don't have any control over, and there's a risk there. And then number two, I think that biometrics is a way better way for people to do authentication. Can you kind of explain those two
Yeah.
points?
Bring your own biometrics should appeal to those who have Reynolds wrap hats. Okay. Um, what it does is it means you carry your own biometrics. BOIOB sounds like a lot of fun. And when it comes to biometrics, it absolutely is. You carry your biometric in an encrypted, verifiable credential. And when you're going to share your biometric to have it verified, they're actually verifying a biometric template. They're not taking the biometric from you. They're verifying that the face that you present in front of a face pod or on a camera is actually the same face and the identity of, let's say, your passport chip. And they're comparing that on a template with the credential in your device. You're not actually handing over your biometric to them. So, if anything, this is the most privacy preserving way that you can use biometrics because the fact is if biometrics are compromised, it's not really easy to reset your face. And so, what this does is it starts to help move us away from having centralized large databases of biometrics because everyone is carrying their own in an encrypted, verifiable credential.
And this is where the distributed ledger side of things is applicable, correct? Because that's what, you talk to a lot of people about crypto and Bitcoin and whatever else, and they immediately start like glazing over. Well, but this is a practical application of distributed ledgers for the purpose of removing that risk that singular databases do have, correct?
Correct. So the ledger can be used to help confirm and verify that credential. It can verify the schema, it can be used to verify the organization who issued the credential. But the other part in the advancement of verifiable credentials is you can use a distributed ledger or you can actually use some protocols. So for the European Union Digital Identity Wallet, a ledger is not a part of the protocol OID for BC. And we can still use verifiable credentials with protocols, for instance, that the European Union Digital Identity Wallet. So that's a great advancement of a verifiable credential is there are certain use cases when it comes to the highest privacy preservation, or you need to be interoperable with multiple ledgers that you would use a ledger format. Or if you're in a situation like the EUDI, where the protocol doesn't require a ledger, verifiable credentials can now support that as well. And in fact, we do both.
Okay, then is this more secure than the current infrastructure and systems that we have? Because I mean that's like the rub is this going to make people change things on the infrastructure back end and all that, or is this just a layer that optimizes how this is all going to work?
This is a layer that optimizes how it's all going to work. If you're starting from scratch and you're a company that's building a new identity system, start here. But if you're a company that already has federated identity providers, you have a centralized data identity system, this is actually a layer on that allows you to extend that system where you can now issue and verify credentials. And why is that important? Because, for instance, starting next year, the European Union Digital Identity Wallet goes online. If that's not on your bingo card, it's on mine, and I will beat you on bingo next year because you need a plan on how you're going to at least verify credentials issued in the European Union, if not needing to be able to perhaps issue them. And so, what this does, it allows you to say, I don't have to rip up my entire identity system simply to verify a digital identity coming out of the European Union Digital Identity Wallet. I can be able to verify that with the addition of software onto my existing system and also get the benefit of EUDI.
So, like, let's expand a little bit on EUDI. Why is that becoming a thing, and how would that be? Like, I'm an American, right? I mean, the redneck in me is like, who cares about EU? But like, what's the point that we should take away from what EU is doing there?
Remember GDPR and no one cared about it?
Yeah.
Well, let me introduce you to EUDI. It's your new GDPR.
Okay. Is it more effective than GDPR and not nearly as asinine? Because that was the problem with GDPR.
GDPR, primarily purely policy. EUDI is an actual. What happens is the European Commission voted to allow every member state to issue a digital identity wallet to every EU citizen, and in that wallet they can carry identities like their driver's license, their national citizen identity, bank credentials, digital travel credential, which is a passport. And they can carry all of that in a digital wallet that is either supplied by the member state or perhaps another wallet provider. If you're seeing the US and you do absolutely no business with the European Union, you probably aren't going to be impacted by this. But if you do business with European Union citizens, European Union companies, or you even do business with companies who do business with Europe, yes, this is what's going to happen. So when GDPR went online, there was that point of decision. Do I have one system that meets GDPR requirements because that was something that was impacting my business and then I run a counter system for everyone else? Or do I just want run one system that meets GDPR requirements? I think that's where we're going to go with the European Union Digital Identity Wallet. You're going to want to incorporate that into your existing system because you're not going to want to have a parallel identity system just for EU citizens and EU companies. And while EU citizens, I think, will be the first ones to be carrying these credentials, the EU is also moving to business digital identity credentials that will be held in enterprise or business wallets as well. So this isn't just thinking, well, if I deal with an EU citizen and I want to verify their identity or one of these credentials, It's going to be, do I do business with any EU companies? Because they're now going to have their business identities in these wallets. And for you, it's not a pain in the ass if you make it the way that you should and saying there's actually tremendous benefit here by having those identities and a verifiable credential. You can pull those into your browser or your app and create actually a more seamless experience for your customers. So, in one sense, it is compliance because they are requiring it. On the other hand, it's allowing you to have authoritative, secure digital identity in a way that you've never had to pull into your existing workflows and actually create a better experience, not only for the EU customers that you have, but for everyone.
Is this a glacier that's moving across the globe that the US just needs to basically get on board with? Because I mean, I know
Yeah.
you've got like legitimate people using this for travel in African areas. You've got Aruba, I believe. Like I mean, I'm starting to see, the Forrester analyst guy in me, like the trend sorts to be pretty evident.
The trend is very evident. And whether the US makes the decision or not to go by way of verifiable credential, I think the benefits, the user experience, the efficiencies, the opportunities to develop new revenue off of these credentials is attractive that a US business and company will want to take advantage of this. They're not going to want to sit on the sidelines. And I think as far as travel, the traveler is going to expect this type of digital experience from the US over time, especially those who come from digital native generations who don't understand why they have to carry a paper booklet in order to travel. And so I think, in one sense, the consumer, the traveler, the expectation is going to push the US in that direction, regardless of whether they make the proactive decision to do that or not.
Yeah, this one to me is very interesting because typically when it comes to tech and like cool future looking things, the US is kind of ahead of other folks and they gravitate to us. And now it's flipped around because the US has got its own archaic, asinine privacy requirements that I mean, this stuff, I'm still struggling for people to understand why they wouldn't move towards adopting this. I'd love to see this type of thing in the Department of Veterans Affairs because I have to deal with, the multitudes of authentication and papers and all those things I have to do just to get the healthcare that I'm legally guaranteed.
I think it's the business model of many of the companies that are headquartered in the United States, where that business model is anchored on, getting as much money as you can from data selling. And what this does is it's changing and shifting the paradigm on how we share information about each other and who holds and consents on that information. And so it does actually challenge a number of business models that were absolutely anchored on hoarding data. But as we both know, hoarding data is really not a good move. And it's time to innovate and think about how you can deliver better experiences, better solutions based on the new identity architectures that can actually make you more money and reach markets and ecosystems that you couldn't reach with with a centralized system, or that you couldn't reach with your walled garden, because the fact is you can only build your walled garden so big. And this is something that is going to be worldwide and interoperable regardless of borders.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of is weird because there's so much other stuff that's happening in the US that like leans towards this is where we're aligning, but it is still the US is a laggard here. I mean, I've noticed more and more every time I fly, we're moving towards more biometrics. I don't print out my boarding pass. I literally was while we were prepping for our chat was looking on Apple's new wallet thing, and you can add in your driver's license for a bunch of states. You can add in your passport. So I mean, it's kind of like boiling the frog, I think, but we're not as far ahead on. Is the EU going to use this for voting as well?
Don't know for certain, but I think you can see a world where if your driver's license, your passport, your national citizen identity card, or your voting registration card is digital, that you can see where eventually organizations can evolve that way. But I don't know for certain if that is what they plan to do with it.
I mean, in the U, it'd be great to see, that. like for the I mean, all the bitching and moaning that folks had about the voting cycles and paper ballots and none whatever else. I mean, if you had verifiable credentials plus distributed ledger and those types of things in the voting system, that whole thing becomes pretty much moot.
Well, I'm gonna up that and say, wouldn't it be great if you could use your mobile driver's license issued in the form of a verifiable credential to log in to all your state services?
Hmm. Yeah,
Right?
I mean,
Wouldn't it be nice if you could use that verifiable credential that the state provides to prove yourself through POS terminals and stores when you wanna buy age-restricted products, right? So, I think the verifiable credential, and this is taking it beyond the MDL, MDoc, right? This is taking it to a full ecosystem that you can use what the state is providing to prove who you are instead of right now in the state like I have an identity with one agency, another agency, and gosh knows if I can even use that to log in, right?
mhm.
But I
Yeah,
mean, we
it's I mean, it's painful, setting up businesses and going through the tax IDs and all those other things, like, the number of pieces of paper you have to have are crazy.
now this is where your tinfoil hat audience will say, but I don't want anyone to track me through all these agencies, and I may be renewing my driver's license, but when I go over to apply for a business license, I don't want the DMV, right, to know that I'm applying for a business license in another county, perhaps. Absolutely, you shouldn't have to have that. And that's what's different with a verifiable credential. Is the verifiable credential because it is not using a direct integration from a centralized database, and it is not phoning home to the issuer of that data to verify it because that is not needed in verifiable credential. That's where it's very advantageous for a state and for someone to use that instead of some of the early iterations of MDL or other types of centralized or federated identity systems that states are buying. And that's where a verifiable credential is really that way forward when you think about how you use your driver's license in the plastic or how you use your passport in the booklet. When I go to use that passport to open a bank account, the State Department doesn't know that. And that is exactly what a verifiable credential replicates, but in digital formats. That's why it's really important when we talked about ease of login to all the agencies. I don't want a federated login, right? I don't want to what the IRS has done, right? I want a privacy preserving way to prove who I am to the state, but not have one single state entity track all of my behavior.
So, I mean, it's putting, it's very much like how crypto has kind of upended how the banks are able to be in command and control of all this money and infrastructure and putting it back in the hands of the person, whereas this is putting your credentials and your privacy to a degree back in your hands.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
And I mean, for the tinfoil hat people, like that's actually what you've been moaning about. So that's kind of where we want to go. So describe the process for this for somebody. Like, what's the difference between the way I think Aruba is one of your primary use cases so far? Like, what was it like before to get to Aruba without it? And what's it like now?
Okay. So you would check into your flight. You would show your passport when you board the flight, where you open up and the agent's just making sure one, you have a passport, and two, that from the best of their ability, you match that picture. And then when you land, you go and wait for an immigration officer, or they have a more modern system where you're scanning your passport and the camera and then the gates. And we all know about the lines, right? Just because you arrive doesn't mean you're going to get out of that airport anytime soon. Um, what this does is it changes that paradigm in the sense of when you're at home and you're going to check in for your flight. In the case of Aruba, you have to fill out what they call an ED card. And that before you even go to the airport. And that provides information about who you are, the hotel that you're staying at, because you're required to have a place to stay if you're not a resident of Aruba. It provides information about the dates. Um, and you have to fill that out, and it had been a piece of paper that you printed, and you carried it to the airport, and then you showed it before the check mark that before you got on the flight. Well, what the airline is doing is the airline is hoping, A, that you're actually going to cross the border because if you don't, they get to send, put you on the plane and take you back home, right? So with a verifiable credential, first of all, when you do that first process with the government, you are actually connecting straight to the government. When you actually do a scan and a liveness selfie check with your passport, they're returning back what's called the digital travel credential. And that is a specification by ICAO, which is an international specification. ICAO actually did the specs for why all passports look the same. That's an ICAO standard. So it's the same thing. ICAO has specification for a digital travel credential type 1. And what Aruba is returning to you is actually a digital travel credential type 1, which is a replica of your paper passport. So everything that is in your passport chip is now in that digital travel credential, including your biometrics. And think of it as an encrypted container. They're returning it back to you, okay, in your wallet. They're not sending it to your airline, they're not sending it to a third party. It goes straight to you. So when you go to board that flight, you can verify instead of showing the paper passport, you can verify the DTC and that Aruba has given you pre authorization that when you arrive, you will clear. So for a traveler, especially those that spend a lot of money on a vacation of a lifetime, they don't have to worry about whether they're going to cross the border when they get there because they've spent so much money. They have that thumbs up before they go to the airport. And then when they arrive, here's the key. There's an Aruba Happy One Pass or Aruba AHOP lane. It is the fast lane because when you arrive in Aruba, there are going to be very long lines. And what happens is you actually go up to a face pod. It does biometric recognition of the biometrics you provided. It's bring your own biometric. What we talked about earlier, they're using bring your own biometric. So you're verifying the biometric. They're matching it up against your record in their immigration system. It goes maybe 3 seconds to do this, and then you're out. You're on your way to the beach, and that
Mm.
is it. And
So
so for you as a traveler, what did you notice? When you went to go check into the flight in that getting ready, you had to go to a link to Aruba, which you would have to do anyway. Aruba asked you to do a scan and liveness selfie check and fill out some information. They pushed a credential to you. You said yes. And then the rest of your journey has either been a biometric or sharing that credential. And you don't really know that it was a digital travel credential type 1.
so it's much more streamlined. It's very, very similar, I guess, in nature to kind of like if you do global entry into the US,
Even
but even more,
faster.
yeah, even more streamlined.
Even more streamlined, and because you've created digital travel credential type 1, if there are other countries that are willing to accept Aruba's decision about that, they can accept that same credential. So, that becomes very important when you have geographies where you have countries that already have agreements amongst each other on how they're going to travel and move travelers and citizens through. They can be able to accept each other's identities, much like how countries use passports, right? They've decided, countries are going to decide, we're going to accept passports from these countries. And it's the same thing with the digital travel credential that you'll see. The main thing that's different with global entry is I'm in global entry, but it means nothing when I go anywhere else.
Yeah, right.
In this case, with the digital travel credential, it will mean something to countries that are accepting them. And what we see or over the course of the coming months, you will have more countries going online accepting the digital travel credential or issuing the digital travel credential themselves.
Interesting. Okay, so then you guys also have had some material out there on the web about what you're doing around like agentic and AI and some of those things. How is like what's the spin there?
Well, fraud. There are a few things going on with AI. And if you're not thinking about identity and how you are identifying not only the customers that you're dealing with, but also the agents that you're dealing with, it's gonna get really dicey here for you. What I love about AI is it's just, fraud on steroids. And so for verifiable credentials, this is great because it's an immediate way you can start solving these issues in your earliest pilots and go to markets. I was watching one solution yesterday. It was like the equivalent of being in a digital nudist colony. It was flinging PII everywhere simply to buy a plane ticket. It was
Mm,
flinging, my DOB. It was flinging my address. It was flinging my mileage, um, account information. Oh my gosh! Because the AI API that was connecting to buy the plane ticket actually had the LLM just pushing that information straight into it with no encryption, nothing. It was asking, so it was basically, I want to fly from San Diego to Tulsa, find me the best deal, right? Totally what you would think AI, best deal hotel. And now I'm at the point where I want to buy my ticket. And, when you buy a plane ticket, you do have to enter information. You do have to enter PII. First of all, how do we even know it was me buying the plane ticket using my credit card and my driver's license? We
mhm.
don't know. And then the data that it was pushing to the API to buy it was just completely out in the open. Now, once it got into that organization to buy the ticket, I'm sure it was protected, it was secured, it met all the requirements. Well, we are in a wild west of flinging PII right now in AI. And that's the first thing we have to get at is how do we share digital identity in a secure, privacy preserving way that has decentralization that reflects how the architectures of AI work. And then the next thing that we're already experiencing that we are already talking about is we spend so much time, even in AI, verifying that my customer is my customer. Regardless of how you do it, whether it's 50 questions, whether it's trying to present some password, okay, awesome. Well, now we're seeing situations, especially if you're a big brand, where individual like, I'm going to create your AI for you and I will sell tickets. I will sell hotel rooms. I'm happy to do that. And either they're hijacking, right? So they're still proving your customer is your customer, but your customer has no ability to prove that to you.
Mm.
None. And so they're buying tickets, they're buying plane tickets, they're booking hotel rooms through AI agents who say they're your brand. They're not. In the meantime, your customer's like, awesome, great. And they've just been scammed $15,000
I think that happened with
because
Ticketmaster, didn't it? Like, Ticketmaster had a big thing.
yeah, it's happening more and more because there's no mutual authentication. And when you talk about authentication, oftentimes I'll hear that, well, we ask you questions and we know it's you. I'm like, awesome. How do I know you're you? And then the blank stare happens.
Yeah, well, we're the bank.
We're
Okay.
the bank. Because now I'm like, yeah, but there are like 10 other bank AI agents, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Because they say they're the bank too. You have to start thinking differently about identity in AI. And the only way to think about it going forward is mutual authentication. It is your obligation and it has to be your security posture that you offer mutual authentication. Your customers have to be able to authenticate you as an organization in this world of AI. Otherwise, you're going to create extremely negative customer experiences because they won't know that they connected with the fraudulent agent. All they'll know is that your brand scammed them out of money because you didn't take the right decisions to protect their security and give them the ability to authenticate you. And they're not going to give the second chance. They're going to move on because the scams that are happening are not 50 cents or a dollar here, they're thousands of dollars. And that also, all the investment that you're making in AI to put together all these amazing, experiences, well, if I keep getting scammed in these early days and money taken, how reticent am I to continue to move forward? So this also protects your investment that you're making in AI. So what I just, especially this last week from things that I, was demoed, is you have to think about identity in a different way with mutual authentication day one on AI. And if you don't, you're just creating yourself an engine of fraud that will continue to grow exponentially, and you are going to have to deal with it. This isn't whether I will or not. This is how much money am I going to drop having to fix it? And you think about it from day one, you're going to spend a lot less money than you are a year or 2 years from now.
Always cheaper to do it at the beginning. So last kind of question here is like on the side of anybody, like vibe coding is a thing. People are building apps, people are deploying new stuff all the time. Are this is something that we could build into our, our own stuff. Like if Chase is at home and he starts, I don't know, building up I don't know, a gambling application for his golf business, I could hook into this and make it part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a technology problem anymore. It's just getting, the right agents. And you can go to indicio.tech. And whether you need to issue credentials or verify credentials or have a digital wallet that is compatible with the European Union digital identity wallet, all of those things are available. And we can just help you out and get you going.
And you guys are running the infrastructure side of it. You're not like, that's one thing people a lot mixed up in crypto slash verifiable identity is like DCO is running infrastructure to make all this work.
Correct. We give you the infrastructure tools. You go design your solution on top of it. You design what type of credential you want to issue. You put it into your own solution. We're just saving you a lot of time, energy, and frustration because you're not having to make a verifiable credential from scratch. You're not having to build a digital identity wallet that's interoperable with the Europe from scratch. We just give you, a head start, and then you take that and integrate it into your own solution.
So is this more zero trusty than the current approach? Yeah, that's my last softball question.
Yes, I think this would make Dr. Zero Trust very happy because Dr. Zero Trust has been watching this for longer than he cares to admit.
For a long time, and it's finally becoming a thing, and I'm super glad to see it. You've been pushing the rock up the hill for a decade plus, so
Yeah, I
it's
mean, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success, doesn't it?
well, I mean, it's funny because let's see, Kindervog had that with ZT. You've got it with verifiable creds. It's I guess I'm just surrounded by people that don't quit, which is awesome. So
Well, that's what it takes to change the digital world that we first built, and we're realizing it didn't serve everything that we needed in humanity. And for those who are coming in and saying, let's make the digital world look like the world that we live in real life, it is a boulder up the hill because there are commercial interests, financial interests, regulatory interests, ego interests, and we are trying to do things to actually help benefit people and managing and just making better experiences. Why in the world do we punish our travelers by making them prove their identities more than 11 times simply because we don't want to play ball with each other and create interoperable, verifiable credentials? Is that why we want to do this to our travelers? We don't have to do that anymore. And that's pushing a rock up the hill, but we're getting there. And in the coming weeks and months, I'm very excited for what some global brands and entire nations have made good choices that are benefiting their customers and their citizens. And so excited to see those go live into full scale production.
yeah, me too. I'm glad this needs to hurry up because I don't like carrying paper, and I'd rather just live the way I do digitally. Because
Yeah,
I mean, all the privacy people that I deal with that gripe about privacy, it's like this is a privacy thing. So there you go.
it
Like
is.
I don't know how to make it
It
much
is.
cleaner for you.
It is. And if anything, what we see is digital native generations, this is what they expect. They don't understand why we made all these decisions to torture ourselves. Like, why would you do that? Why would I carry this book of paper with me on
Right.
vacation?
I've
Like,
got
I
my
don't.
phone. Yeah.
Right. I'm going on spring break. I'm going to the Caribbean. Like, why would I need some paper my mom has in the closet? Right. And that's the reality is their pocketbook, their percent of spend, their purchasing power continues to grow. They have different expectations than we did. And we have to deliver and meet those expectations. Or you know what? they're just gonna change it anyway.
Yeah, right. They'll just do the
Yeah,
thing and it'll happen,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
It's inevitable. Let's
There's a
just
few
do it.
inevitabilities, and this is one that is definitely
This is one of
inevitable.
them. They're not going to be carrying paper and plastic cards. They're gonna look at us like, "What were you doing?" And
Yeah.
they're just gonna change it. So let's just go change it and get on with it.
Right, and then everybody wins. Well, okay, so,
Yeah,
folks, if you're out there and you're listening to this, you wanna learn more about verifiable credentials, you're building your own applications, and you wanna get into this model, which I would suggest is a very good way to approach the problem. Look up Indicio, Indicio, it's .tech. Look up Heather Dahl, Dahl is her last name, is how it's spelled, and reach out to these folks because they are changing the world one credential at a time. Heather, thanks for
thank
jumping
you.
on.
Thank you.